Fatal Frame. It's a game that probably needs a lot of introduction, but before I dive into these games, I'm just going to say that I will only be covering the original PS2 trilogy, meaning none of the new games. If this episode does well, I might come back with the other games, but for right now, I'm only covering these three. With that out of the way, let's talk about Fatal Frame. Fatal Frame was developed by Tecmo, and originally inspired by Makoto Shibata's supernatural encounters in his real life, like seeing things that weren't there or having an off feeling. By the time the two started work on Fatal Frame 1, the PS1's life cycle was just about to end with the new release of the PS2. Shibata wanted to use the brand new graphical power of the PS2 to bring his experiences to the game. The team would focus on relatively monochrome color style for the first game. The reason for this chosen color was to represent the hope and fear, with white being hope and black representing fear, with added touches of red among the colors to symbolize light. Along with visuals, the team wanted the audio to play a big role in adding to the atmosphere. They decided to play with stereo as an audio format to create a surrounding audio to the game, making it sound like the player was getting attacked from all sides. The location for the player to be attacked in was decided to be an old-time Japanese mansion. The team wanted the game to feel like an old Japanese horror film with both a low and high budget. You can definitely see where the low budget shines through though. They also decided to keep the game set in 1980, to exclude modern technology to keep the player feeling alone and out of touch from the outside world. While the building blocks were getting put in place, the little game called Silent Hill would be released on the PS1. The reception from Silent Hill would help the team gauge how they would move forward with Fatal Frame. However, Shibata wanted to take the horror from Silent Hill just a step further, causing the team to really focus on how scary they could make this game, and oh boy, did they. Since this game was centered around the supernatural, this game has ghosts as the main enemies. Originally, the way to combat these ghosts were going to be centered around lighting, using your flashlight to attack the ghosts. However, the team decided they wanted the combat to be a bit more offensive. They ended up deciding on using a camera as the game's main weapon instead. Fatal Frame 1 was announced in July of 2001, with its release in the US on February 27, 2002. Within the first week of launch, it sold 22,000 copies. Not the craziest amount, but it was overall well received. However, some players couldn't finish the game due to being too scared. After the release of the first game, Shibata started working on concepts for the second game. Realizing everyone was too baby to finish the first game, he would go into the second with a heavier story focus to hopefully encourage players to power through the fear to solve a mystery. The team wanted to build on the behavior of the ghosts for the second game, focusing on how they act in more mythological tales along with pop culture spirit. One of the pop culture inspirations was Steven Kubrick's The Shining, which I get, guys. This movie was good. I like it too, even. But good lord, every horror game doesn't need to be inspired by this thing. Get some new inspiration. Jeez. What was that? Oh, really? Okay, my bad. Shibata had a second inspiration named Sushi Yokomizo, a Japanese horror novelist. With all of the main concepts from the first Fatal Frame staying intact, this game was ready for release within the next year, releasing to the US on December 9th, 2003. This game is stated to be one of the best in the entire franchise, which I don't know what is with horror franchises and making better sequels, like, you know, Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill 2, Fatal Frame 2. Anyhow, just before the release of Fatal Frame 2, Shibata already had the third game in mind. He realized that this next Fatal Frame game could potentially be the last for the PS2, as the PS3 would be inevitable. So he wanted to go into the third game with a wrap to the trilogy of all the PS2 games. With every game, he had taken inspiration for new types of fears to inject in his games. With Fatal Frame 1, it was the supernatural. 2 was focused on having the fear of abandonment, a fear I will never have after playing that game. Mayu, you need to shut the f*** up! But 3 would focus on everyday fears that most humans go through. Dreams are what he would land on using for the main threat and setting for the third game. They should just call it Fatal Frame 3: The Edge of Sleep. No? Okay. The team would keep adding to the complexity of the ghosts, looking into old Japanese beliefs to give a more authentic feel to the horrors of this game, because that's what this franchise needed to be, more authentic. The game was released on November 8th, 2005, and reached 5th place in Japanese sales charts with a total of 69,000 copies sold. These three games are all released around the same time, meaning they don't look very different in between their releases. meaning I'll just talk about them as a whole and branch off when a game does something unique. Every Fatal Frame game keeps a very specific color style, with washed out colors mostly consisting of black, white, grays, and browns, and one sample color like with Fatal Frame 1 and 2, they use red, and with Fatal Frame 3, it's blue. Along with washed out colors, there are also some special screen effects that include this static film effect whenever a ghost is around. This game, as you can probably already tell, uses fixed camera angles, similar to Resident Evil. Although unlike in Resident Evil, these cameras sometimes move and follow the player, allowing for more control over what the developers want you to see. Fatal Frame 3 takes the camera a little further with holes you can peep through and a camera that follows you through a hallway. This game doesn't look very dated either. I was very surprised with how well this game looks after all the years. It does have some awkward moments with the visuals. The sound is really where the game shines though, with eerie chimes playing in the background as you explore these liminal spaces can really put you in a tense scenario. While the music keeps you on edge, it's the overall sound design that brings it home, with creaks of old floorboards and doors, and any extra sound effects like laughing or crying ringing throughout the halls. The atmosphere of this game goes hard, always keeping you on your toes. Fatal Frame's controls, however, feel very dated. This game has a stupid movement format with the square making you run forward, using the joystick to redirect you. While that sounds simple, every Fatal Frame game for some reason resets your movement every time you cut to a new camera, meaning when your camera changes, you have to take your hand off the joystick and then you're allowed to use it again. It's stupid, clunky, and just is a pain to get used to. Other than that, the controls for combat work fine. Speaking of combat, let's move on into the gameplay. Fatal Frame is a survival horror franchise, which means usually picking up items to help you survive in the world. In Fatal Frame, your main weapon is the camera obscura, a camera that has the ability to capture spirit energy from ghosts, damaging them. This is done differently depending on which game you're playing, but the concept is all the same. The camera is loaded with different types of film. In the whole series, there are 6 types of film. Type 7 is a refilling film used more for taking random pictures of ghosts. I'll wrap back around to that later. Type 14 film is your combat film. The highest film you can obtain is Zero type film. Another survival horror staple this game remixes is puzzles and locks. Some doors in the Fatal Frame universe have normal locked doors with a key you'll need to find in order to open them. Other doors, however, will have this spirit power surrounding them. Then you can take a picture of that spirit energy and it will show a location in the film. Go to that location and retake the picture and the energy will be gone from the door, allowing you to open it. While on the topic of pictures, there are 2 different kinds of energy you can encounter while playing these games. In every Fatal Frame game, you have this filament. This filament will glow blue when there is passive ghost energy that you can take a picture of in the area, while red glowing filament means there is a hostile energy in the area. Now, just because the filament is red doesn't always mean that you're being attacked. You could just be taking a picture of an aggressive spirit, with that uncertainty lingering in your mind that can make any ghost you encounter scarier since you really don't know when they'll attack. While fighting ghosts, you might take damage. No matter what Fatal Frame game you're playing, you always have 3 types of healing items. Herbal medicine, which does partial healing, sacred water, which will always heal you up to full, and stone mirrors. These will heal you up to full after you lose all your HP, and you can only carry 1 at a time. With all the general gameplay covered, I'm going to go into each game's differences and additions, starting with Fatal Frame 1. This game's camera obscura uses a charge-up feature while fighting ghosts. The longer you hold the camera on the ghost, the more charge it gets. The more the camera gets charged, the more damage it will deal. But if you take a picture while fully charged at the moment right before you get attacked, you can perform a shutter chance, dealing even more damage. Editor ID here. I miswrote in this script here calling the bonus functions in Fatal Frame 1 lenses. Lenses didn't show up until Fatal Frame 2. You can also upgrade your camera by finding special lenses around the manor. While these lenses make their appearance in almost every game, how you use them changes. In this game, the lenses mostly give your camera a special ability like slowing ghosts down or dealing double damage. In Fatal Frame 1, you can find these spirit orbs. These spirit orbs allow you to power your lens. After defeating a ghost, you will get points. These points can be used to upgrade your camera, like how much charge you can have or the range of your viewfinder. Now on to Fatal Frame 2, where everything I just talked about changes. Lenses are still in the game, but no longer need any spirit orbs to use. Rather, you charge up spirit energy by dealing damage to ghosts. Once you have enough charge, you can use the lens. Different lenses have different amounts needed to operate. They also change how the camera works. The camera combat focuses on how close you are to the ghost. The closer you are, the more damage you deal. Shutter chances have returned, but they also added another layer to it now. If you wait right before you're about to get hit by a ghost attack, you can deal a fatal frame, causing massive amounts of damage. Fatal Frame 2 has the most customization for your camera in my opinion. Spirit orbs are still in the game, but now you need them to unlock an upgrade to a skill. Want to upgrade your camera's power? Well, slot a spirit orb in the power slot and pay the price. Do the upgrades right and you can make a really OP camera. I made the Double Blast Camera Deluxe, a camera that uses the blast lens, dealing double damage to every ghost while only using 2 spirit orbs. I upgraded my max charge capacity to 4, meaning I could double blast a bunch of the endgame boss ghosts. It felt great. Moving on to Fatal Frame 3. This game adds a lot, maybe too much, but I'll talk about that more later. Fatal Frame 3 takes the charge up feature from Fatal Frame 1's camera and the proximity charge from Fatal Frame 2's camera, combining them into a camera that charges up while focused on the ghost, but will charge up faster if you get closer to the ghost. This game has the same upgrade system with one small tweak. Spirit orbs in this game have been completely removed. You don't need them to upgrade your camera or use lenses. This game rather added special abilities for your character. In Fatal Frame 3, you will play as 3 different characters, each one of them having a special ability. Ray, your main character, can flash ghosts, causing them to stagger back. Great for pushing back ghosts when you're surrounded. Miku is the returning character from Fatal Frame 1, and her ability causes a slow field around her, slowing ghosts down while in and out of your camera. Kai is the cousin of Mio and Mayu from Fatal Frame 2, and he can use stealth to hide from the ghost. If that sounds dumb, it's because it is. This game also for some reason changes the controls for the series. In Fatal Frame 1 and 2, you use the circle button to raise your camera. Fatal Frame 3 changes it to triangle for some reason. Controls aside, this game adds a new healing item to the game called Purifying Light. This is implemented 3 chapters before the end of the game, not making much of an impact. While exploring the setting of this game, the Manor of Sleep, you will see the screen go black and white. The game has a name for this, but it didn't really matter to me since I was 2 hours away from beating the game. Anyhow, when this happens, it makes all the ghosts stronger, but if you can find the new item called Purifying Light, you can get rid of this effect. You do have to monitor this item, however, since you can only hold one at a time and it will burn away as you explore, causing you to have to make a choice on when to pick up this item to get the most effective use out of it. As you can tell, these games overall are very similar, but have their own little unique quirks that make them different from each other. It was actually really fun going through this original trilogy and seeing how they built on the formula. But now, let's see how the story... So the Fatal Frame trilogy is interesting. Fatal Frame 1 and 2 are completely disconnected, while Fatal Frame 3 is connected to both Fatal Frame 1 and 2, making it odd to cover their stories as a whole without spoiling it. So I'm not going to give any details that it's a spoiler to any of these games. This also means that Fatal Frame 3 will be missing a lot of its general plot. So don't go to the comments saying I missed something. This is all to keep the virgin years intact. Fatal Frame 1 sees Miku Hinasaki on the lookout for her brother who has gone missing after he went to go find a supernatural investigation team that also went missing at a remote mansion. Miku soon finds herself dealing with a nasty curse inflicting her, so she has to find a way to break the curse to save herself from the malicious spirits in the manor, while trying to find her lost brother and uncover what happened to that investigation team. Fatal Frame 2 sees the 2 twins, Mio and Mayu, getting lost in the woods and somehow crossing into a lost village. With no way out, they explore the area, finding out again that some kind of curse has inflicted the village, causing it to be locked. Anyone who finds themselves here is trapped by a cackling woman, meaning it's going to be up to Mio and Mayu to find a way to break the curse and escape the village. Fatal Frame 3 sees Ray kill her husband in a car accident. Well, that's a sad start to a game. Yeah, and Ray agrees. While grieving from the loss, she gets a job out at an abandoned manor. Not the one from the first game, a completely different man. You see, she's a professional photographer, a character that Shibata wanted to play with in his first game, but opted out of it. While at the manor, a nasty curse attaches it to her, but unlike in the first 2 games, this curse is reactive to grief, meaning it follows Ray into her dreams, using her dead husband as bait, which is just a little messed up game. Overall, the goal is still the same: figure out how to break the curse before it kills her. She isn't alone. Miku from Fatal Frame 1 is here as her assistant. Apparently, her brother and Ray's husband were great friends, so after Yu's death, Miku decided to move in and help Ray out. While this is just an overview, each game goes in depth about their curses, why is it happening, what may have caused it, and of course, how to stop it. These are all illustrated via memos, like most survival horror games. Now, let me close this out with my opinion. I knew I couldn't trust this guy. I really love the Fatal Frame PS2 era. I was first introduced to it via my mom, who would play it on her old PS2. I was in charge of reading the guide and relaying the information back to her, making me the navigator through the horrors of these locations. Being older now, it's a blast to be at the helm and experience these games for myself. All these games nailed the spooky atmosphere for me with their dark washed out settings and creepy sound, with the scenes straight out of classic Japanese horror movies that I have fond memories of, like The Ring and The Grudge. While I wasn't too scared to finish the first game, apparently like some people were, I definitely was on the edge of my seat more than most horror games I have played recently. My favorite is Fatal Frame 2. The scares are great while the gameplay is the most compelling to me. It also feels like the easiest to navigate even though you're in a big village. A memo the third game did not get. While I have no problems with the first two games, Fatal Frame 3 rubs me the wrong way in multiple ways. For one, the setting in the game is huge. While being so bland, it's hard to get your bearings and follow the landmarks around the setting. Not to mention the stupid dream mechanic where you wake up taking you out of the game. Then when you go back to sleep, you might be playing as a different character on a completely different storyline and objective that's not all made very well clear to you, leaving you confused and lost, which honestly happens time to time in the first two games, but it's not a problem because exploring those locations are super easy compared to this game. Then when you finally do figure out what the hell you're doing, the game kicks you out and makes you go back to a different character who, guess what, you have no idea what you're doing with again. Another problem with this game's exploration is in between dreams, the house will decide to randomly lock off different routes and shortcuts for no reason. Like there's this one door that leads to the main hub area that gets locked at random, making me go all the way around, leading to a frustrating gameplay experience. I mean, I can literally access it from a different route. I don't see why having this specific door lock means anything for the playthrough. Another issue with this game is they make the ghost encounters harder. This wouldn't be an issue, but they send multiple ghosts at you and give them stupid movesets, making them hard to follow and hit. Sometimes I did hit them, however, and the game just wouldn't register it, causing me to take damage for no reason. Also, your camera upgrades don't transfer from character to character, meaning if you play 3 different characters, your camera isn't getting a full upgrade from any of them, causing your camera to feel weak by the end of the game. Unlike in Fatal Frame 2, where my camera was supercharged because I got to personally build it without any interruption. With all that being said, let's put these games in the spookometer. Would I recommend playing Fatal Frame? I would only recommend you play either Fatal Frame 1 or 2 since they scratch that survival itch without any of the problems from 3. I wouldn't recommend this series at all, however, if you're easily scared or trying to get into survival horror. These games are horrifying and I would only recommend it to horror game veterans, since it might make you guys even afraid. But as a survival horror game, this is a solid game to check out this Halloween. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and thank you. No glitches? Okay, thank you all for watching. You can't see it, but